This is a long walk to just share something. I was fortunate to go to Atacama in March of 2008. And what the film didn't show, it showed a dry, rocky desert portion with only a little bit of a dried salt lake. But there are flamingos that inhabit that lake. Beautiful flamingos. Aves rojo, see? See? And that's all I had to say.
Tú no mostraste los maravillosos flamingos. Eso dice que también hay eso, no solamente seco.
I want to ask, has your movie been shown in Chile and how has it been received?
Que si lo mostraste en Chile y cómo lo recibieron en Chile.
La película fue mostrada en un pequeño festival que yo organizo en Santiago en junio del año pasado, ante una audiencia muy grande de unas 2.000 personas, y fue muy bien recibida.
The film was presented in June last year in a festival, in a little documentary festival which I organized since 15 years, and it was well received. We presented it in a big cinema with more than 1,000 people, and it was very good.
Pero la exhibición comercial va a comenzar el 8 de septiembre de este año.
But the commercial release will be in September, 8th of September this year.
Con 12 copias.
And with, I hope so, 12 copies.
I need to tell you this in Spanish, so excuse me, please. Hola, mi nombre es Daisy, soy chilena. Estoy trabajando acá en Estados Unidos desde enero solamente. Vine con mi esposo y por la edad te darás cuenta que yo soy de aquellas chilenas que somos ignorantes porque crecimos en el periodo de la dictadura. Ignorantes en el sentido de toda esta memoria que tú muestras. Sabes que solo en enero tuvimos la oportunidad de ver la batalla de Chile porque es muy difícil conseguirla. Entonces, cuando con mi esposo la vimos, fue como una bofetada muy fuerte para nosotros. Y te quería agradecer eso, de que todavía haya gente que esté produciendo material para que quienes no vivimos tan de cerca la tragedia seamos capaces como chilenos de entenderla y que no se muera. Quería agradecerte eso.
Gracias.
What Daisy said is that her name is Daisy Núñez. She just came this year with her husband from Chile, and she grew up during the time of the dictatorship. She, as a result, was not able ever to see Patricio's work, and she was, by the way, she's my colleague at Union College too. She was able to see the Battle of Chile for the first time here in the U.S. Just these past 2 months, and it was striking. It was a part of her historical memory that she's very thankful to Patricio for having access to.
Hay un grupo de 30 documentalistas jóvenes y muchos de ellos trabajan la memoria.
In Chile, there are 30 documentary filmmakers, young documentary filmmakers, and they are also working on memory subjects now.
Y hay también una nueva generación de historiadores que están retrabajando el tema de la represión de Pinochet.
And also there is a new generation of young historians. They are working on the subject of Pinochet dictatorship also.
Este año va a salir otra edición de la batalla de Chile en DVD en Santiago. Será más fácil conseguirla.
And this year a new DVD edition will be released of the Battle of Chile, will be released in Santiago, and so it might be somewhat easier to get it. Would be little, but would be there.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for coming. I was wondering how the women who are searching in the desert, do they have clues as to where to look? We kind of get a sense of this search that's never ending. And I was a little worried about them. How do they know where to look, if at all?
Al principio comenzaron buscando de una manera muy desorganizada.
When they began, they did it in a very disorganized way.
Y los arqueólogos, Lautaro, el que aparece en la película, les enseñó a excavar.
But the archaeologists, pardon, who you could see in the film, Lautaro, they learned them, they showed them how to search, how to look the desert, how to look to catch what could be under the sand.
Y también recibían datos de los vecinos.
And also they got from the neighbors, they got some hints, some informations.
Había gente que había visto pasar un camión, entonces dibujaba la dirección del camión, hacían pequeños planos.
And there were people, they watched the car and they noted the numbers and they gave it to the women.
Y poco a poco estuvieron a punto de descubrir la fosa.
And this way, very slowly, they come to a point to discover a mass grave.
Y fue en ese momento cuando Pinochet ordenó recoger los cuerpos y llevarlos a otro lado.
And in this moment, the dictatorship, Pinochet's dictatorship, gave the order to what is it
To pick up.
to pick up, but to it's like in this borrow, yeah. Yeah?
Yeah.
To pick up them and take them to another secret place.
O sea que hay muchos cuerpos que se han encontrado fragmentos, pero no se sabe realmente dónde están los huesos grandes de los esqueletos.
And that's the reason, because there were found little fragments of bones, but they don't know where the rest of the skeleton could be.
How did you get the idea to combine the two searches up and below? And do you believe that the military does have this information that the women are looking for and it's a matter of them releasing it? So there are two questions.
Dos preguntas.
Sí. Durante 4 años yo escribí sobre esta idea, ¿no? En el cine documental lo que uno suele hacer es un guión imaginario. Uno imagina una realidad.
I worked 4 years on the subject, and what you do normally in documentary film is, what I do is to write an imaginary script.
Y sabía, bueno, siempre he sido aficionado a la astronomía, me gusta la arqueología, conozco los pueblos mineros abandonados. Digamos, todas las historias del desierto más o menos las conocía.
I knew the history and the different histories of the desert because I always liked astronomy. I was aware of the miners, I was aware of a lot of things of the desert.
Y poco a poco la idea fue, la historia se transformó en algo, en una fábula que se podía contar.
And slowly I got to a history which I was able to narrow.
El problema, bueno, hay varios problemas. Uno es que a veces uno imagina una realidad que después no existe.
But there are some problems in this process. Sometimes you imagine a history which in reality doesn't exist.
Entonces lo primero que hice fue buscar los personajes.
And so the first thing I did, I went out to search the characters.
Que son 9 personas.
And there are 9 persons.
Y ellos fueron capaces de cruzar las líneas.
And that they were able to cross the lines.
Porque los arqueólogos se mueven en una columna que no se conecta con la de los astrónomos.
Because the archaeologists, pardon, I have difficulty. Archaeologists, I have difficulties with this word. And the astronomers, they are working separately. They don't speak with others. There is no connection.
Y las mujeres nunca hablan con los astrónomos.
And the women neither, they never speak to astronomers.
Entonces lo que había que hacer era cruzar estas búsquedas
So-
para construir una historia.
So what I had to do was to combine these histories, to be able to have the history.
El personaje más difícil fue Valentina.
The character, the most difficult character was Valentina, the young woman,
La mujer que aparece al final.
which comes up at the end of the film.
Ella me dijo, estoy de acuerdo contigo, me gusta tu proyecto, pero no me siento capaz de hablar de mi vida.
She said to me, "I agree with your film and with your project, but I don't feel able to speak of my life."
Yo le dije, no te preocupes, hacer una película documental es muy lento, voy a tardar un año más, y tú piénsalo y nos comunicamos y ya veremos qué pasa.
I said to her, "Don't worry, to make a film is very slow. I have to go to editing, this could last 1 year, and I come back to you."
Y cuando hice la primera estructura, fui a su casa a Chile, le mostré la película y me dio la entrevista al otro día.
And when I had one of the first structures of editing, I went to her house and I showed the film, and she said, "Tomorrow I give you the interview."
Es la primera vez, ella tiene 36 años, es la primera vez que ella cuenta su vida.
It's for the first time in the film that she is talking of her own history. She's a young woman of 36 years.
En los otros astrónomos que trabajan con ella no sabían que
Ja.
ella era una hija de desaparecidos.
Her colleagues, the other astronomers, didn't never know that she is the daughter of disappeared parents.
Otra situación difícil fue cuando le dije a las mujeres que se iban a ver con el astrónomo.
Another quite complicated situation where when I say to the women, they go to meet the astronomer, the young astronomer, Gaspar.
Porque ellas dijeron, nosotros somos ignorantes, no tenemos idea de astronomía, ¿qué vamos a hablar con este señor que es un profesor?
But they were like afraid. They did what could we talk to a scientific person? He's like a professor, like a teacher, and we don't know nothing from this subject.
Y el astrónomo también estaba nervioso, decía, ¿qué puedo yo decirle a estas mujeres? Ellas son mucho más importantes que yo.
And the astronomer became nervous on the other side. He said, "What would I talk to these women? They are more important than I, and I cannot do this."
Y en ese momento el astrónomo tuvo una idea genial.
But then he had a great idea.
Le dijo a las mujeres que la luna ha estado mirando la Tierra desde hace millones de años.
He said to the women, "The moon is there for a million of years. He saw everything what's going on Earth."
Y que la luna sabe todo lo que ha pasado en la Tierra.
And so the moon knows everything.
Por lo tanto, lo que hay que hacer es hablar con la luna.
And therefore you should speak to the moon.
Y con esto la tensión desapareció y se hicieron amigos.
And that was the point where the ice was broken between them and they became friends.
Thank you for a beautiful night. And we live in a country which has a terrible case of historical amnesia as well, including about the U.S.'s role in Chile and in the coup. But my question is, at one point the archaeologist in the film describes how many people participated in making these bodies disappear. The drivers, the soldiers, all the way through the military bureaucracy. And And my question is, have none of these people come forward, and have they all been given impunity with regard to the consequences of their actions?
Del 100% de los casos de violación de derechos humanos en Chile, se ha resuelto el 40%.
From the 100% of the crimes against human rights, there are 40% they are judged today.
Falta el 60%.
But there are 60% which are still missing.
Uno se pregunta cómo es posible que los jueces chilenos sean tan lentos, que tarden más de 30 años en juzgar ese 60%.
And the question is why the Chilean judges are so slowly that they need more than 30 years to judge against this crime.
Hay una falta de voluntad política para acelerar estos procesos.
It's because there's no political will to do this. That's the reason.
Yo creo personalmente que hay un pacto secreto, un pacto de silencio entre los militares y la clase política.
I personally believe that they still have a pact of silence, a secret pact of silence between the political class and the military.
Y eso, bueno, causa una gran indignación, ¿no? Esto, y no sé cuándo se irá a solucionar.
And that is still a big indignation, and I don't know when they will come to resolve this.
Los militares no hablan.
The militaries don't speak.
Hay un piloto de helicóptero que sí confesó haber tirado cuerpos al mar.
There were one pilot of an helicopter. He confessed that he threw the bodies over the sea.
Hay 2 o 3 casos de militares que han hablado.
And there are 2 or 3 more cases who talked.
Pero en el caso de Calama, ninguno de los que participaron en la operación de enterramiento y desenterramiento han hablado.
But in the case of Calama, nobody of the persons who participated in the history of the bodies they picked up and they threw away until today had talked. Nobody.
Los militares creen que hablar es una traición.
The military people have the opinion if they talk, it is what is
treason?
They become
Treason.
traitors.
They will become traitors. Yeah.
Y esto es completamente ridículo.
And this is obviously is ridiculous.
Thank you.
Hola, quería hacerte 2 preguntas. Primero quería decir lo bonito que era la película. Vi mucho la conexión entre las 3 cosas y sentí una conexión tan bonita porque yo soy americana, pero soy de padre chileno y siempre hablan de la dictadura y todo eso y pude entender más entre tu película viéndolo. Quería saber si tú tienes otro proyecto que son similares a esto que tienes planeado en el futuro.
I am a child born in the U.S. of Chilean parents. And I found the film to be very beautiful. I wanted to know if he has other film projects coming.
¿Te refieres a un proyecto futuro?
Pues un proyecto que es como similar como como la dictadura de Pinochet o la astronomía, todas las conexiones que hiciste en esta película.
Bueno, no voy a repetir el tema.
I will not repeat the same subject.
Tengo otra película en la cabeza sobre Chile. No creo que abandone el tema de la memoria, pero va a ser diferente.
I have in mind another film of Chile because I will not drop down this subject with my subject, but it will be another. Will be not the same subject, but will be about Chile, of course.
Y la segunda pregunta era si tú sientes que hay algo que te gustaría contar más a la gente sobre la dictadura de Pinochet, que no se habla mucho, pero que tú sientes que es bien importante discutir.
If you know of a different dimension of the dictatorship that hasn't been addressed and that you would like to tell about it.
A mí me sigue pareciendo completamente desproporcionado lo que Pinochet hizo para aplastar el régimen de Allende.
I think it's totally disproportionate what Pinochet did under the dictatorship to the persons, to the people.
El pretexto era terminar con Allende, ¿no? Pero terminó con todo, con el Parlamento, con la universidad, con la educación, con la libertad de prensa, con el pluralismo político, con todo. Destruyó el país.
Yeah, finally, he destroyed the country. He said it was against Allende, but he destroyed every other thing also.
Sindicatos.
The unions.
Universidad.
The universities.
Educación.
Education institution.
Quemó los registros electorales.
He burned down the
electoral registry.
Thank you. I don't know.
Y realmente es completamente desproporcionado e injustificado. Se le fue la mano y ahora sienten una gran culpabilidad. Chile es un país lleno de culpabilidad.
It was so disproportionate. He just went beyond anything that we can imagine, and he just left a very big scar in the nation.
Y yo pienso que un país que no recupera, que no se reconcilia, es un país bastante dañado.
And that I believe that a country that is not able to reconcile itself with itself, to reconcile its own history, it's a damaged country.
La memoria no es un tema intelectual.
Memory is not an intellectual topic.
Es un elemento concreto.
It's a concrete element of life.
Un país con memoria puede hacer mejores negocios.
A country with memory can do better business. For instance,
puede hacer mejor turismo,
can do better tourism,
mejor cocina,
better cooking.
Y Chile es un país con mucha tarjeta de crédito y muchos rascacielos.
And Chile is a country of a lot of sky rises and a lot of credit card appearances.
Donde se consume una gigantesca cantidad de tranquilizantes.
Where a lot of tranquilizers are consumed.
Hay un enorme alcoholismo.
There's a lot of alcoholism.
Y la gente trabaja muchísimo.
And people overwork. Sounds like the U.S.
Sí, yo creo que sí.
Okay, gracias.
No, okay.
I have a question. When we look at testimony or memory, and a lot of what your film is doing is giving us a visual look at this history or these multiple histories or these connections. So you're looking at, we have beautiful images and shots of the stars, of the space, of the opening of the, what is it called? The planetarium. And of the pictures that people have left as remains to memorialize the people that they've lost to what happened in Chile. And my question for you is, it's very prominent, the sound that plays a very important role in your film. We're very familiar with the visual of memory, but if you could talk... Oh, sorry.
La narración es muy visual, pero que el sonido también juega un papel muy importante, la banda sonora.
Yep.
Quería saber sobre esa relación entre las imágenes
y el sonido. En toda película de atmósfera el sonido es muy importante.
In every film that deals with an environment, sound is very important.
Y el silencio es muy importante.
And so is silence.
Y el viento que siempre sopla en el desierto es un personaje.
The wind that is constantly blowing in the desert is a character in itself.
Y el que hizo la mezcla de sonido es un excelente técnico.
And the engineer who did the sound mix is an excellent.
Es un belga.
He's a Belgian
Se llama
engineer.
Jean-Jacques Quinet.
Jean-Jacques
Quinet.
Quinet.
Y el ingeniero de sonido de terreno es un chileno, Freddy González, muy bueno.
And the sound engineer on the land in Chile, he's Chilean, also very good.
Muy bueno. Era muy importante la calidad del sonido en esta película.
The quality of sound was tremendously important in this film.
Y la música la hicimos por correo.
And the music was done by mail in exchange with the...
Con una pareja de músicos chilenos que con un conjunto de 12 cuerdas.
With a couple of Chilean musicians and an ensemble of 12 instruments.
Y ellos me proponían un tema, yo les proponía variaciones, ellos me proponían otra y iba y venía.
And so they were proposing a sort of an arrangement, and then he would propose a different sort of set of images, and there would be sort of this exchange back and forth.
Fue un trabajo muy bueno.
It was wonderful.
A mí me gusta montar una película al mismo tiempo que sonorizarla.
I like to create the montage simultaneously with the sound of the film.
Cuando no tengo la música definitiva, tomo alguna música de mis discos y la pongo.
When I don't have the definitive soundtrack yet, I just take music from my own collection and use it in the meantime.
Y todos los ruidos también.
And all the noise is very important.
Para tener una sensación de cómo está quedando la película.
To have a really good sense of the texture of the film.
Y mi propio texto también lo voy escribiendo y lo voy diciendo con un micrófono.
And at the same time, the narrative that I read, I practice and I read it with a microphone.
No el texto definitivo, una aproximación.
Not the definitive text, but an approximation.
Es muy bueno porque así tú vas avanzando con todos los elementos al mismo tiempo.
It is really, really good because then you advance the project with all of the different segments at the same time.
Y la montadora era una mujer muy joven.
The person doing the montage was a very young lady.
Y yo le voy contando lo que se me va ocurriendo.
I tell her what is coming to my mind.
Y cuando termino de contar ya está listo.
And then when I finish telling the story, everything is ready.
Ella es enormemente rápida.
She's enormously quick.
En realidad la estructura la hicimos en un mes.
And so the narrative structure of the film was completed in a month.
Pero el montaje en total duró 7 meses.
But the montage in itself lasted 7 months.
Es lo normal en una película de hora y media.
It is what's typical in a film that lasts for an hour and a half.
Tal vez puedes también decir algo sobre la cámara, because you could perhaps say some words about the camera woman, because she did a tremendous work with the sound engineer.
Sí, pero quiero hablar más del montaje. El montaje en el cine documental es como tejer.
Montage in documentary filmmaker is like weaving.
Es como tejer una tela, una alfombra.
Like when you're weaving a rug.
Se avanza 3 minutos por día.
You advance 3 minutes per day.
Y al otro día tal vez retrocedas 6 minutos.
And then you might go back 6 minutes the next day.
Y al otro día vuelves a empezar.
And then you go again the next day. So
es tremendamente lento.
It's tremendously slow process.
Y absorbente.
And absorbent.
No te das cuenta, llegas a las 10 de la mañana.
You don't notice you arrive at 10 a.m.
Y de repente ya son las 5 de la tarde.
And then all of a sudden it's 5 p.m.
Es una droga.
It's a drug.
Pero es un trabajo maravilloso.
But it's a wonderful experience.
Sobre todo cuando se trabaja con libertad.
Especially when you're able to work with freedom.
Cuando no llega alguien de la televisión a decirte corta aquí, alarga acá, esto no me gusta, etc.
When television technicians or others come in and tell you where to cut and I don't like this or I don't like that, when you have that kind of freedom is
Los asesores de la televisión son terribles.
Television assistants and helpers are just terrible people.
La mayoría no tiene idea.
The majority, they just don't know.
Y como decía Renate, la mujer que hizo la cámara es magnífica.
And as Renata was saying, the woman who did the camera work she's just magnificent.
Entendió la luz del desierto inmediatamente. Entendió.
She was able to understand the light and the different manifestations of light in the desert very quickly.
Que era muy difícil.
Which was very difficult.
Porque es una luz muy fuerte.
because it is a very strong light.
Y luego trabajamos con mucha libertad frente a la materia.
And then we were able to work with a lot of freedom before the materiality that was in front of us.
Filmamos durante días y días piedras.
We filmed for days and days on end just stones
Tirados en el suelo.
thrown on the ground.
Para ver cómo se movía la sombra de esa piedra con respecto a otra piedra y ver cómo el sol avanzaba.
Just to see how the shadow of that stone with respect to the stone right next to it moved, and to be able to understand the relationship in space between the two stones.
O, por ejemplo, acercarse mucho a una pared de roca.
Or also doing a close-up of a wall made of rock.
Tocando la cámara con la pared.
Almost the camera touching the surface.
Para ir filmando la textura del desierto.
So that you can start and get a very strong sense of the texture.
La
of the
materia
desert,
del desierto.
The matter of the desert.
Es extraordinario porque es un planeta, es Marte.
It's extraordinary because it is like being in Mars. Like
Y nosotros no sabíamos por qué estábamos filmando eso.
And we didn't know at the time why we were filming that.
Porque hay un momento en el cine documental en que tú no sabes lo que estás haciendo.
Because there's a moment in documentary filmmaking when you don't really know what you're filming yet.
Son tus reflejos de cineasta que comienzan a funcionar.
It is your own intuition as a filmmaker that is sort of working for you.
Que son fundamentales.
Which are fundamental.
Después eso mismo va a servir de soporte para una música, por ejemplo.
And then later on that's going to become the platform for a whole musical score.
No se sabe.
You just don't know.
Y los personajes son otra maravilla.
And then the characters are another wonder.
La entrevista es una forma un agente narrativo muy importante.
The interview as a genre is a very important agent in the process.
Nunca empiezo por la pregunta principal, por supuesto.
I never start with the most important question.
Empiezo lo más lejos posible.
I start the farthest away from the question, the most important question as possible.
Por ejemplo, al astrónomo, ¿qué hacía su padre?
For instance, the astronomer, what did your father do?
¿O en qué trabaja su mamá?
Or what does your mother do?
Y poco a poco, muy lentamente, voy llegando al centro del tema.
And then gradually, slowly, I start getting closer to the center.
Y hago muy pocas preguntas.
And then I make very few questions.
Dejo que los silencios, cuando la persona no sabe qué responder, se queden así, en silencio.
I let the silences stand there, and then I wait.
Los periodistas le tienen terror al silencio.
Journalists are very afraid of silences.
La televisión también.
And so is television.
Y lo más interesante a veces es lo que no dice un personaje.
And the most important is what the character does not really tell you.
Y si el personaje se asusta, vuelvo hacia atrás.
And if the character becomes frightened, then I pull back.
Lo interesante es que ellos mismos se acerquen al tema, no empujarlos hacia el tema.
What is important is that they themselves come closer to the topic, not to feel pushed to the topic.
Cuando uno empuja a los personajes, el espectador es el primero que se da cuenta.
When you push the characters, the spectator is the first person to notice.
Y cuando un documental pierde credibilidad, se hunde.
And when the documentary loses credibility, it sinks.
Eso es bien complicado. Y por supuesto hay que ser lo más subjetivo posible.
And then you need to be as subjective as possible.
No, esta película no es científica, es una película artística.
This is not a scientific film, it is an artistic film.
Y eso es muy importante.
And that's very important.
Porque de ahí viene la emoción.
Because that's where emotion
de la subjetividad.
Of the emotion of subjectivity.
Hay una enorme cantidad de documentales que parecen trenes.
There's an enormous amount of documentaries that look like trains.
Está la máquina.
There's the machine.
El vagón número 1.
The number 1 wagon.
Vagón número 3.
Then the second and third.
Vagón número 5.
Then the fifth.
Y son planos.
And it's like plain.
No tienen desarrollo, culminación, desenlace.
There's no development, there's no climax, development, and conclusion.
No son nada.
They're nothing.
Y yo creo que lo importante es la subjetividad, la credibilidad.
And so I believe that the most important is subjectivity and credibility in the film.
Sí, sí, perdón, quizá estoy hablando demasiado.
Maybe I'm speaking too much.
No, you're not. So, your discussion about art is so important for us, the art of filmmaking, here at the Sanctuary for Independent Media. And also with our co-sponsors, the Arts Department at the IER Presents at RPI. And we're always looking at this question of how art can be used to communicate political ideas and social change ideas.
Entonces, la pregunta mía se relaciona cómo el arte puede comunicar ideas políticas, ideas sociales.
And so I wanted to follow up even in a deeper place with you. It seems like of all of your great work, this has evolved to this transcendent place.
Entonces, parece que en esa trayectoria de tu trabajo, esta obra particularmente ha trascendido.
Where form and function play such an important role and balance for each other.
Donde la forma y la función juegan en equilibrio.
Where aesthetics, where such a sublime beauty juxtaposed with content and politics makes such a powerful chemical reaction.
Donde lo sublime y lo político hacen una combinación tremenda, como una reacción química muy potente.
So I'm wondering if you could talk about your reflections upon the relationship between beauty and politics.
Entonces me pregunto si puedes hablar un poquito sobre lo que vos ves como la relación entre la belleza y la política.
Within the art of filmmaking.
Dentro del arte del cine.
Es una pregunta difícil, sí.
It's a very difficult question.
Porque hay muchos aspectos que son indescifrables.
Because there are many undecipherable aspects.
Por ejemplo, ¿cuándo empieza la poesía en una secuencia?
For instance, when does poetry begin?
En una secuencia.
In a sequence.
Uno no sabe.
One doesn't know.
Uno empieza a sentir que algo está ocurriendo con el montaje, ¿no?
You begin to feel that something is happening with the montage.
Pero uno no está seguro si eso se puede desarrollar mucho o no.
But you're not really quite initially certain whether you can develop it or not.
Cuando uno está haciendo una entrevista, hay momentos en que comienza a surgir la emoción también.
When you're conducting an interview, there are moments in which emotion also emerges.
Pero tampoco uno sabe si va a durar mucho o no.
But you don't know how long that emotion is going to last.
Lo interesante es transformar la entrevista en un espacio cinematográfico.
The important thing is to transform the interview in a cinematic or cinematographic space.
Uno comienza con preguntas y respuestas, pero hay que abandonar eso rápidamente y ir desplazándose lentamente hacia el cine.
You begin with questions and answers, but then you gradually need to move away from that and to displace yourself toward film.
No hay que tener ningún papel en la mano.
You cannot have any papers, or shouldn't have paper in your hand.
Hay muchos periodistas que tienen un papel en la mano y cuando uno está respondiendo, ellos miran el papel para acordarse de la pregunta que viene.
There are many people that have a paper in their hand and they have it there to remind themselves of the next question.
Y eso distrae por completo a la persona.
And that is a very distracting thing to do.
El que más se da cuenta de lo que pasa es el entrevistado.
The one that notices the most in what's happening is the interviewed person.
El entrevistado sabe si el director está concentrado o no.
The interviewed person knows whether the interviewer is focused or not.
El entrevistado sabe si el cámara tiene buenas relaciones con el director o no.
The interviewed person knows whether the camera person and the director have good relations, for instance.
El entrevistado se da cuenta si el sonidista es bueno.
He also knows whether the sound person is good.
Es al revés, es el entrevistado el que se da cuenta de todo.
She or he is the one that notices everything.
Por lo tanto, el equipo tiene que estar totalmente concentrado en el entrevistado.
And so everybody in filming has to be focused on the interviewed.
¿En qué momento el cámara debe comenzar a hacer un pequeño zoom al entrevistado?
At what point does the camera person begin to zoom in on the interviewed?
No se sabe.
You don't know.
No hay fórmulas.
There's no formula.
Pero sí, cada entrevista tiene una estructura dramática.
But each interview has a dramatic structure to it.
Si el cámara está atento, él sabe cuándo tiene que acercarse.
If the camera is paying attention, they know when to zoom in.
El problema es que la vida en general se compone de átomos dramáticos.
And what happens really is that life in general is composed of very small dramatic atoms or particles.
Aquí yo tengo muchos átomos dramáticos enfrente.
I have a lot of dramatic particles in front of me right now.
Que son vuestros rostros.
That is your faces.
Y cada rostro tiene una energía y tiene una molécula dramática en su interior.
And each face, each facade has a dramatic molecule within.
Cuando uno sale a la calle, está lleno de átomos.
So when you go into the streets, the street is full of atoms and particles.
De repente una señora que no se atreve a atravesar la calle con un cochecito para niños, no lo hace, se queda quieta.
Like all of a sudden, a woman with a child and a carriage is unable to cross the street and she remains frozen.
O un coche se detiene en medio de la carretera sin ninguna razón.
Or a car stops in the middle of the street without a reason.
Son pequeños átomos dramáticos.
It's small, dramatic moments, particles.
Que para un documentalista son como palabras.
Which for the documentarist filmmaker, they're like words.
Palabras sueltas.
Loose words.
Y con esas palabras hay que formar frases.
And with those loose words, you begin to construct phrases.
Y con esas frases una historia.
And with those phrases, the history or the story.
Por lo tanto, es muy difícil saber cuándo la emoción, cuándo un tema va a encajar con otro, no se sabe.
And so it is really, really difficult to know when a theme or an emotion is going to fit in with another one. You just don't know.
En realidad, antes de entrar en ese tipo de temas, hay que hacer otra reflexión.
And before you go into those sort of topics, you still need to reflect on something before that.
No hacer películas demostrativas.
Do not make demonstrative films.
O demasiado pedagógicas.
Or too pedagogic.
Demasiado explicativas.
Too much explication or reason.
Con una voz dictatorial.
Or with a dictatorial voice.
Que piensa antes que el espectador lo que tiene que pensar.
That is thinking before for the spectator, so that the spectator is manipulated.
Y una gran parte del cine político comete esos errores.
A lot of the political film today makes precisely those kinds of mistakes.
Hay que dejar el espacio abierto para que el espectador saque sus propias conclusiones.
You have to leave the space sort of open so that the spectator can draw her or his own conclusions.
Ya sé que es difícil, pero hay que intentar hacerlo.
I know it is difficult, but you really need to try to do that.
Y uno va aprendiendo de a poco.
And you just continue learning gradually.
Se aprende siempre.
You're always learning.
Y yo creo que una de las cosas buenas de un artista es que mientras más viejo mejor.
And so one of the good things about an artist is that the older you get, the better you become at the craft.
Nuestra jubilación es al revés.
Our retirement is backwards.
Y yo creo que más o menos se respondió a algunas cosas que tú.
And so I hope that answered some of the things that you asked.
Thank you so much.
We've just returned from a vacation in Chile and arrived in Punta Arenas shortly after they had a general strike over the increase in gas price. but we learned about it through others. There was nothing that we as observers could see around us during the time we were there. Your film started out speaking of life in Chile as being easy, beautiful, and pastoral. And ends with a retrospective on something that happened in between. I was not able to observe a tension within the society we observed. So it is difficult for me to understand what happened between pastoral and terrible, and what were the dynamics of a very short, seemingly liberal period politically that would encourage Pinochet to not only set back the political to before liberal, but also to seemingly destroy all of institutional. Can you give some insight into how?
No.
No.
Aquí es bonito lo que él dice porque te fijas las pausas que hace.
It's beautiful what you say, and you should notice the pauses. And
sí, eso me gusta mucho.
Okay, I like the pauses a lot.
En realidad, he hecho otras películas donde explico todo lo que usted quiere saber.
In reality, I've addressed a lot of those questions that you ask in my other films.
Y me encantaría tenerlas aquí para regalárselas.
And I would love to have them here so that I could give them to you as a gift.
Thank you.
Okay. I'll try to remember to put in pauses.
Trataré de acordarme de poner pausas.
My comment for you is something you've heard many times, I'm sure. But not everybody here maybe has. The first time I saw the Battle of Chile, I was in Quito, Ecuador, in a regular theater filled with Chileans who were in exile. And the emotion was incredible. And it was the only time I ever went to a movie where nobody applauded at the end. They were just sobs. And I have a question which is just trivial in a detail, but I was curious about Luis, who was the preso, and that he never showed his face. And I know when I sometimes go on indie media for Santiago that it's like a courtesy to wipe out people's faces in indie media. And did you on purpose not show his face, or did he have an objection, or was that just me?
No, si aparece su rostro.
I think he might be a different character you're thinking about. Yo creo que está Luis muestra su
el que construye un pequeño teodolito de madera y que está mirando.
It's the guy who builds the little device to look into the sky. That's Luis in the film, and he does show his face.
Sí, se ve su rostro. Sí.
There are a couple of shots that are from the back.
Sí.
Yeah, the face shots.
I was very struck.
Everybody shows. Yeah, everybody shows.
No, pero ella tiene razón. Es un personaje que solo tiene voz en off.
It's one of the characters that has his voice in off.
Él nunca habla.
He never speaks.
Es decir,
he's doing things, but his voice is recorded outside of the sequence.
Exactamente. Eso quizá.
Yeah, that might be what you're talking about.
Sí, sí.
That he does not speak directly to the camera, unlike other characters.
So we have 2 more questions, and then we will end.
2 more questions?
In the movie, I was very struck by the line, I wish they would the astronomers would turn their telescopes downward to the Earth. In fact, people have used satellites and some aerial photography to find mass graves, for example, in Iraq. My question is, do you think that the U.S. government would support that use of technology with their satellites, or would the U.S. government feel uncomfortable because of their support for Pinochet?
No tengo idea. No sé.
I really don't know.
Conozco esa técnica de satelital. Es un radar. Hay un radar que es capaz de descubrir civilizaciones antiguas, murallas, restos.
I'm familiar with that technology of a radar that is able to see through these territories and uncover remains from other civilizations.
Toda la superficie de Venus ha sido posible topografiar así.
The reconstruction of the topography of Venus has been possible precisely because of this technology.
Es la tragedia chilena desde el punto de vista de los números es menor porque deben de haber unos 800 cuerpos en el desierto.
The tragedy in terms of numbers in Chile is much minor because there must be some 200 bodies in there.
Yo creo que es difícil interesar a una institución para esto.
And so it would be sort of a question of magnitude. It would be difficult to get an organization interested just to unearth and discover 200 bodies. 800, sorry.
Sí. Allí en Santiago había una persona, una empresa que tenía una máquina también que se utilizó para ver lo que había debajo de algunas casas de tortura.
In Chile, they had a company, a corporation that had a machine that was used to identify and scan.
Y encontraron varios cuerpos.
And they did find several bodies.
Sí, tiene razón.
I just want to thank you for a very deep and beautiful and very heartfelt film. And my question is, why did you choose the title that you did?
El Nostalgia de la Luz es el título, Nostalgia de la Luz, Montes y Maravillas de la Astrofísica.
The title comes from a larger, longer title, Nostalgia for the Light, Mountains
y Maravillas
and Marvels
de la Astrofísica.
Of Astrophysics. It's the title of a book.
Es un libro del año 86.
Published in 1985.
De un astrofísico francés que se llama Michel Case.
From an astrophysicist from France whose name is Michel Case.
Es un libro técnico.
It's a technical textbook.
Y a mí me encantó tanto la primera parte del título que Renate y yo fuimos a verle al Observatorio de París.
And so we liked the title so much that we went to see him at the observatory in Paris.
Y le contamos el proyecto en que estábamos haciendo.
And so we told him about our project.
Y el astrónomo nos dijo inmediatamente, tome, se lo regalo el título.
And so he said, you can have it, you can have the title.
Es un gran científico, Michel Case.
He's a well-known scientist, and
¿Y se acabaron las preguntas o hay más?
No, solo una cosita. One little thing that in French the title is Lumière.
Nostalgie de la Lumière.
Nostalgie de la Lumière. Yes.
Monde et merveille de l'astrophysique.
And it establishes an interesting connection between film in old times, ¿no? El cine anterior que era de los hermanos Lumière y hace una conexión muy interesante ahí.
También,
resuena.
sí, también se puede pensar en eso. Sí.
Thank you.
Thank you, Patricio Guzman.
Muchas gracias. Lo he pasado muy bien aquí. Muchas gracias por haberme invitado.
Thank you so much. I've had a wonderful time here. Thank you for having invited me.
Solo quería contarles que nos costó mucho producir la película.
I just wanted to let you know that it really cost me a lot producing the film.
Ningún canal de televisión entendió la idea.
Nobody in television in Europe understood my idea.
Creyeron que era un raro potaje de astronomía, geología, derechos humanos.
They just thought it was a rare mixture of philosophy, human rights, astronomy, and different sort of fields.
Y por esa razón mi mujer decidió hacerse productora.
And that is the reason my wife decided to become the producer.
Y si no hubiera sido por ella, no hay película.
If it wasn't because of her, there wouldn't be a film.
Thank you very much. If it would not have been for the filmmaker, there would be no film work.
Muchas gracias por tu traducción.